Be right back.
Okay.
Good morning. You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Started in just a minute. I'm just waiting to see.
Okay.
Give everybody a couple minutes to come in.
While we're waiting, is there any way I can get the review sheet?
Sure.
Number?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. I'll be happy.
All right, thank you.
Yes, it sounds reminding. Did you get class 5 review sheet? For last class? Yes, yeah, did you get the review sheet? Yes. This? Okay. I know that I was a little late handing them out, and I know somebody missed one, but I don't know. Good morning. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. So we'll get started. All right, good morning. So you guys read chapter 7 in your yellow book and took the test in the white book on page 138. Does anybody have any questions on chapter 7? Anything that I can help you with, explain, go over? So this is going to be in this book. Page 1, 3, 8. All right, Stephanie, how did you do?
I missed one.
Okay. Do you happen to have 5 and 6 for me as well?
Yes, ma'am. I got 100 on both.
Thank you. Nakaya?
I got -1.
Thank you. Narlene? Did you miss any? Did you get any wrong? How many? Chapter 7. Oh, you didn't do it yet. Okay, okay, that's fine. All right, so today we're going to learn 3 skills, and the rest of the class will be practice. So you should have about an hour and a half or so, maybe even 2 hours practice today. And then on Monday, we have the last 3 skills. So you guys are 6 skills away from being done. Told you it goes fast. Okay, does anybody have any questions on what we went over on Monday? Because we're going to actually use some of those topics to learn today. All right, so our first skill today is going to be located on page 50. So turn in your book to page 50. And we are going to learn how to transfer a patient out of bed and into a wheelchair. Oops, okay, so this is on page 50 of your white skills book. Testing, okay. Good. This is on page 50 of your white skills book. Our care plan tells us at the top of the page to transfer the resident from bed into the wheelchair. The resident is unable to walk or take steps. Underline that or highlight it or do something with it. Or take steps. So during this skill, if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that this is a live patient skill. You're actually going to be transferring a real person from bed to wheelchair. So if you don't position the wheelchair right, and that person has to unconsciously take a step to be able to get to the wheelchair, you did not follow the care plan. So what does that do to your score? Yep. So it's imperative for this skill that you understand this has to be done as a pivot. The patient cannot take steps. And that's the number one thing that messes students up with this particular skill. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to get the wheelchair super close at an angle, touching the patient so that when you transfer, they don't have to take a step. Okay. Good. All right. It further says the patient can stand with support. So you're not supporting this whole, this patient's whole weight. They just can't move their feet. So when you're the patient for this, don't be all dead weight, so that the event or the CNA is trying to, handle your weight. That's not what this is about. Remember, when we're practicing, we need to practice like the test. And a lot of students do this, and family members are way worse at this. Family members will do this to you all day long. They will immediately default to the hardest possible way to do a skill. They'll start drooling when you're feeding them. They'll say no when you want to brush your teeth. They'll get combative. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. That is not what the test is about. And if you're doing that, you're not practicing for the test. You're practicing for another patient out there that's probably not going to be exactly the same as what you're seeing. Remember, because every patient is different. So when you are a patient for these skills, they are going to give you very specific instructions, and you have to conform to those instructions. So the care plan says you can stand, you just can't take steps. So the evaluators are going to tell you, you're going to lay down in bed, and the person that's being tested is going to get you out of bed and into the wheelchair. You can't take steps, but you can stand. So they're going to give you that information, and it's important that you listen to them. Because the quickest way to upset an evaluator is to try to ham it up when you're a patient, because it changes the test, and the test has to be uniform. Does that make sense? So be really careful there, because you don't want to irritate the evaluator right before you're going to test. All right. So the care plan goes on to say a gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and the resident will stay in the room. So after we get the patient out of bed and into a wheelchair, the patient's going to stay in the room. And normally, if we're getting them out of bed and into a wheelchair, we're taking them somewhere. They're going to activity or a meal, or they're usually going somewhere. That's the whole purpose of a wheelchair. It's mobile. If they were just staying in the room, it would probably just be a chair we were transferring them into. So we need to understand this patient is going to go somewhere at some point, just not during this skill. So when we transfer them out of bed and put them in the wheelchair and we leave them in the room, do you want to leave them facing a wall? No. So that's going to be another checkpoint, is that we turn the patient around so they've got something to look at, that we understand that it's not just about the transfer, it's always about the patient. Make sense? Okay. All of these checkpoints are the reason I teach you the way I do, right? It's always about the patient. And if you can remember the things that I've said over and over and over again, that's why I say them a lot, you will actually do very well on the test, because it's going to be second nature to you. It wouldn't dawn on you not to do it that way. Okay. All right. So if you look at the bottom of the page, it tells us that we have up to 11 minutes to get this skill done. You're transferring somebody out of bed and into a wheelchair. It's not going to take you 11 minutes. It might take you 5 or 6, but you got plenty of time. So slow down with this. You guys remember how to use a gait belt? What we learned? Okay. You'll see it again today. So we're going to use a gait belt. So we're going to get the patient sitting up on the side of the bed. If their feet hit the floor, we're going to talk about their shoes. So that means that we have to put shoes on because they were in bed. There's no shoes when they're in bed, right? So we're going to have to put shoes on. And then we're going to put the gait belt around their waist. And then we're going to pivot them into the wheelchair and then make sure that they're facing the appropriate direction and safe. Okay. So this skill is all about safety. All about safety. All right. So let me explain to you how wheelchairs work. Wheelchairs are usually kept in the folded position for storage because it makes them a little bit smaller. To open a wheelchair, there's no levers to pull or buttons to push or anything like that. It's all manual strength. You're going to lift up on the handles to get the big wheels off the floor, less friction. So lift up just a little bit and pull it apart. That's it. Now, if you try to do that with the big wheels on the floor, it gives you a little bit more resistance. So if you get those big wheels off the floor, it just really easily opens. Okay. If it doesn't open all the way, sometimes like that one over there won't open all the way. It may only open up about this far, and you may have to push the seat down so it's flat. When you do that, pay attention to where your fingers are. You do not want your fingers down between the seat and the sides, because as the seat expands, what's going to happen to your fingers? Yeah. So you want to kind of keep your fingers out of the way as you push down on the seat. Okay. Now, the biggest part of wheelchairs is brakes. Brakes, and more brakes. Unless the wheelchair is actively in motion, the brakes should be on. They're not a restraint. A lot of people think brakes are a restraint. They're not a restraint. The patient can reach down and undo the brakes and go anywhere they want to. That is not a restraint. It is a safety measure because floors are rarely level. Rarely. In Florida, we've got a problem because everything is built on sand, right? We don't have hard clay or soil or rock. Everything is built on sand. Well, what happens to sand if you put pressure on it? It tends to shift. So in Florida, our concrete foundations often crack because of settling. Very common. But that means that the floor is not level. Now, if I put somebody in a wheelchair on a floor that's not level and leave it unlocked, they'll start to roll. What's going to stop them? Whatever they run into. Could be another patient, could be a wall, could be down a flight of stairs. So this is a safety problem. When you leave a wheelchair with a patient in it, you have to have it locked. Does that make sense? Super important. Brakes are important. The way that you engage brakes is there's a lever right in front of the wheel. Some wheelchairs, you pull back on the lever. Some you pull forward on the lever. Everyone works a little bit different. But the whole point is there's a bar. You see that bar, that metal bar, right? We want that metal bar to bite into the wheel, and that is your brake. So when you have a wheelchair, you have to look to see how it works to make sure that you're engaging the brake. So if you look here, you see that metal bar right there? See that metal bar? See the wheel? See how the metal bar is now biting into the wheel? It doesn't move. That brake is on. You see the metal bar right here? You see the wheel? See how the metal bar bites into the wheel? That's the brake. So to disengage a brake, you just do the opposite. So if you're pulling it back to engage, you push it forward to disengage. Okay. That wheelchair is exactly opposite. Okay. So when you go to the testing center, if you have this skill, they're going to show you how their wheelchair works before you ever start the test. So they go through that with you. Okay. Good. All right. So if you look at this chair and you look at the wheelchair, you can actually see it here. You can see that there is a height difference between the seats. Now that's on purpose. Okay. In chairs, we want people's feet to hit the floor because we don't like dangling, right? So their feet have to be flat on the floor. I don't want this person's feet flat on the floor because then I can't push them anywhere. So wheelchairs are going to be a little bit higher than regular chairs. Your patient may not be expecting that, right? If every chair they've ever sat in is that height, when they go to sit here, it's a different height. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's one of the reasons of the gait belt. We're going to help control their descent so they don't just slam down on it. But because this seat is higher, it means the legs are going to dangle. Now, dangling legs are not good because this edge of the seat is going to press up into the backs of the knees. And that's where all of the veins run that bring blood back from your feet up to your heart. If I take a straw and I crimp that straw, can liquid get through? No. So when we have the backs of knees on a seat hanging, it's crimping those veins, which means blood isn't going to be able to get back to the heart. When blood slows or stops, it clots. So when we have a patient in a wheelchair, their feet need to be supported on those foot pedals. Don't let them just dangle. Okay. So the foot pedals have 3 positions. What you see right now is they're wide open. That's what you see right here. Okay. This is the position we use to get a patient into a wheelchair or get them out of a wheelchair, but this is temporary. Then we have the foot pedal or the leg rest forward and the foot pedals up. And this is how wheelchairs are stored. Okay. Leg rests out, but the foot pedals up. Once we get a patient, but we can't put a patient into a wheelchair or take them out with this because it presents an obstacle. They may trip over these leg rests. Once we get the patient into the wheelchair, then we fold down the foot pedals and those support the feet. Okay. So this is during transfers. This is storage. This is when the patient is in the wheelchair. Good. Questions? You may have a written test question on that. And the problem is that a lot of CNAs will put patients in the wheelchair and not put the foot pedals in place and the legs dangle. And then we end up with swelling and circulation issues and all kinds of complications that our patients don't need. So we need to understand that foot pedals are a pretty important part of what we do. All right. So I told you that this skill has to be done as a pivot. So we're pivoting the patient. They cannot take steps. So that means that when we position the wheelchair for the transfer, we want it at a slight angle to the bed, almost touching the patient. So you can see when I stand this patient up, I can just spin them around and sit them down. They're not going to have to take any steps. Brakes must be engaged and foot pedals must be retracted so that the patient doesn't trip. Okay. Questions? Questions? Okay. When we did ambulate with a gait belt on Monday, when I went to sit the patient down, I actually asked, can you feel the seat behind you? And we have to do that with this too. When we pivot the patient around, we want to make sure they can feel the seat behind their legs so they know there's something there to catch them. If you don't do this, if you just turn the patient around and try to sit them down, they will resist because they're not sure if there's something there to catch them. Okay, that's a trust issue. Don't expect your patients to trust you just because you're wearing scrubs, right? Make sense? So a lot of what we learned for ambulate with a gait belt is going to apply to this skill. So we're going to make sure that the patient's feet are flat on the floor. We're going to apply the gait belt, check it with 4 fingers to make sure it's snug enough. We're going to use the same body mechanics, 1 foot in front of their feet, 1 foot beside them, parallel. We're going to hold the gait belt around the back, and they're going to put their hands on our shoulders just to make sure we're lifting as a unit. We're going to turn, pivot the patient, and we're going to ask, can you feel that chair behind you? And then we're going to sit them down. When we take the gait belt off, we're not going to pull it against the skin because that can burn. We're going to loop it up and over, and then we're going to get the patient's wheelchair situated. So turned away from the wall, foot pedals out, leg rests in place, brakes applied, make sure they have their call light. It's actually a pretty quick skill as long as you understand all the safety aspects of it. Okay, good. For the test, if you get this skill, the evaluator is going to pair you up with somebody your body size or smaller. And when you come in, they actually look at your shoes, and they're looking for somebody that has slip-on shoes to make this a little bit quicker and easier. Okay. So any one of you 3 could be a patient for this particular skill because you're less than my body size and you all have slip-on shoes. Okay. So let's review shoe rules. Yeah, you guys didn't even realize I looked, did you? That's the thing about nursing. We assess without being obvious about it. For me, assessment is literally part of my blood. I do head to toe assessments all day, every day on everybody I meet. And it's just ingrained. So a lot of CNAs are afraid of aggravating the nurse by going to them with what they see. You know, well, won't I be bothering the nurse all the time? And the answer is, if the nurse is a nurse, they should be so ingrained with assessment that any information you provide helps them do their job. They should not resent you for coming to them and reporting changes. Okay. All right, so let's review shoe rules because that's a big part of this particular skill. If the patient's feet hit the floor, we talk about their shoes. Slipper socks are not enough. We want to make sure there's 4 fingers between the gait belt and the patient to make sure it's snug enough. The feet must be flat on the floor before we do the transfer. We're going to count to 3 before we lift. The patient is a partner, not a byproduct. We have to involve them in this. We don't need to ask if they're dizzy or weak because we're going to immediately sit them down. So that one we don't have to really worry about, but they do have to feel the chair. And we want to make sure we're using those proper body mechanics. But I want to go back to they have to feel the chair because this can get a little bit difficult if you don't really think this through, right? So let's say that I am transferring somebody that's 150 pounds. Now I'm pretty strong, but you know, I got a little flab going on here, right? I don't spend a lot of time in the gym. I don't have a ton of upper body strength. I can move somebody that's 150 pounds, but I certainly don't want to hold them, right? So I want to do this as quickly as possible. So when I get the wheelchair next to the bed, foot pedals out to the side, make sure it's locked, I'm ready to do the transfer. Everything is all set. All that's left is pick the patient up. I'm going to tell the patient, okay, I'm going to pick you up and pivot you. When you feel that chair behind your knees, say sit. And then right before I lift them up, I'm going to tell them again, remember, when you feel the chair, say sit. So that when I get the patient lifted up and turned, I'm not having to stop and ask and hold their body weight. I don't want to say, can you feel the chair behind your knees? I just want them to say sit, and we're sitting. Okay. So a little preparation here goes a long way of saving your effort and energy and strength. All right. Good. All right. So these are the checklists that they're grading for this particular skill. We want to pivot the patient to sit on the side of the bed. We're going to position the wheelchair with foot pedals up and leg rests out. We'll lock the wheelchair unless it's in motion. We're going to pivot smoothly.
and ensure the patient is positioned properly after the transfer. So I will show you how this works. Now, YouTube guys at home, let me talk to you real quick. YouTube guys at home, I know that it's kind of zoomed in, you know, the view, and you may not be able to see all of it. The video will show you what you're missing here. So the top-down view is better than the side view for this particular one. All right. So I need a volunteer to go lay down in that bed. I need you to take your shoes off before you lay down, please. Yes, please. And you can stay on top of the sheet. That's fine. Okay, here we go. And for the sake of time, I'm going to pretend this is my second skill and I've already got checked off on hand washing. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Fantastic. Do you feel like getting out of bed and into the wheelchair? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close your curtain. Let me go wash my hands, get my supplies. I'll be right back. I have clean hands. I'm going to get my gait belt. And the wheelchair is right here. So I'm just going to leave the gait belt in the wheelchair for a few moments. And I'm going to get my wheelchair prepared. I'm going to move these leg rests out of the way and bring it within reach, but not too close. If I get that wheelchair in position, when I try to pivot her around, her legs are going to hit it. So I want it within reach, but not too close at this point. Okay. So I'm going to help you sit up on the side of the bed and I'm going to do all the work. What I need for you to do is just scoot your whole body a little closer to me, please. Okay. You're going to cross your arms over your chest and relax. So this is not nearly as hard as people think it is. To do this, you want a really wide base of support. So my legs should be at least shoulder width apart. I want to lean against the bed because I'm going to use it for torque. I'm going to put this arm underneath her shoulders all the way to the edge. So this shoulder should be in this palm. This arm is the one everybody messes up. This goes over the knees, not under. Under makes me push and pull at the same time. Over the knees is just a smooth pivot. Okay. You can also have the patient cross their legs to keep them together if you need a little bit of extra help. So I'm going to put my hand under your shoulders all the way over. And on the count of 3, we're going to turn. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Just relax. Feel okay? Dizzy at all? Now I want to give her a minute to acclimate because that's kind of a quick turn, right? So we're going to give her a minute to acclimate. Okay. And then I'm going to help you put your shoes on. Or you're going to put your shoes on. Okay. Yep. Go ahead and fix the heel. And are your feet flat on the floor? Okay. I'm going to place this around your waist and we're going to secure it. So the first free end goes through the first guard by the alligator teeth and we pull, making sure that it's not twisted. And we want to get it snug because if it's not snug, it's going to go up underneath your arms or your brush. You might fall out of it. So we want it to stay in place. So I'm going to get it snug and I'm going to use 4 fingers to check. I should only be able to fit 4 fingers and no more. Then we'll put it back through the second guard. There we go. Now we're ready for the transfer. So I'm going to bring the wheelchair over and I want it at a slight angle, almost touching the patient. See how close that is? And then we're going to lock the wheelchair in place. Super important that we lock it. What would happen if it wasn't locked? Yeah, chances are it's probably going to, just with the weight of her, it's going to move away. All right, so I'm going to help you get into the wheelchair now. You're going to put your hands on my shoulders. I'm going to lift you up on a count of 3, turn you. When you feel that seat behind your knees, say sit. Okay, so I'm going to get in position, 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside. Put your hands up here, underhand grip on the gait belt. Remember, when you feel that seat, you're going to say sit. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Good.
You okay? Okay. So now I can remove that gate belt. And we don't want to pull it against the skin. So I'm going to have you lift this arm up and I'm going to loop it around. Okay, I don't want to leave her facing a wall and I need to get her feet on the foot pedals, but I can't do that because it's right up next to the bed. It won't swing forward. So I'm going to unlock you and turn you around. So lift your feet up. I'm going to go for a little run here. So we're going to turn around. We're going to bring that leg rest forward. Lock the wheelchair. We're going to put the foot pedal down and put the foot on it. Here, we're going to bring the leg rest forward, lock the wheelchair, put the foot pedal down and put the foot on it. Good. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Would you like a magazine before I go? Here's your call light. If you need anything at all, let us know. Somebody will be down shortly to get you for breakfast. And we're going to open the curtain. Put our gate belt away, wash our hands, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. Thank you. Questions? Questions? Okay, so those of you that are watching from YouTube world, you'll want to go back and watch that video so you can see the different camera angles. All right. Any questions on that skill? Let's go to page 75. How do we know what to do with each patient? All right, our care plan at the top of the page says feed the resident a snack who was unable to feed him or herself. The resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. Underline that. This is the only time that you are going to see on a care plan that it tells you the patient is in an inappropriate position. You will never see that on a real care plan. That's up to you to look at. The reason that it's on this care plan is because if you look at the bottom of the page, you may be a patient for this skill, the live patient skill. So if I ask you to slouch, your idea of slouching might just be this, right? If I ask you to slump, you might just do this. This doesn't really, my 12-year-olds used to eat like this, right? This doesn't look like an inappropriate position for eating. So it doesn't matter what the patient looks like to you. The care plan is telling you they're not sitting up straight. So what do you think you need to do for this skill? Yeah, get them sitting up straight. So if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that this patient is going to be sitting in a chair at the side of the bed. So we don't need to put the head of the bed up because they're not in bed. We're just going to ask them, hey, can you sit up straight? That's all we have to do. But the whole point is to make sure that you are looking for that and acknowledging it because that's safety. That counts big on this skill. Just saying, can you sit up straight, please? Counts very big because our care plan is telling us they're not safe. You guys understand that? Okay. All right. So our care plan says feed a resident a snack. So this isn't a meal. If you get this skill for the state exam, you're going to feed somebody a single serve pudding or applesauce cup. So there's not a whole lot here. And in fact, if you're the patient for this, you're going to get some very specific instructions. The evaluators are going to tell you to eat like you eat. Don't drool. Don't pretend you can't swallow. Don't try to win an Academy Award. That's not what this is. Eat like you eat. But after 4 bites, you're going to tell them you're done. Don't take any more after 4 bites. So you're only getting 4 bites of whatever it is you're being fed. And then you're going to refuse any further. Okay. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, they want to make sure that you're going to encourage the patient when they stop eating. That you're not just going to go, oh, thank God, I got a million things to do. You were taking forever. That's not the impression that we want to leave here. We want to be encouraging. So for the test, we have to use 2 ways of encouraging. I'm going to give you 3. So the first thing I do is ask, are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Just one more, right? You can always get further with patients by being nice. So turn up the charm, try to get them to eat a little more. If they sense that you are in a hurry, that you're rushed, that you're not there mentally, they will stop eating because people don't like to feel like they're in imposition. They will stop eating. So check your nonverbal cues if your patient stops eating before everything is gone, because it may be you. You may be giving off that impatient vibe. The second reason that the patient's going to stop eating or be told to stop eating is because of drinking. We have to offer a drink before and every 2 to 3 bites. So if we get to bite 4 and you didn't offer a drink, you're not offering a drink often enough. Now, the reason for that is this. People are different. Everybody is different. Some people eat all of one thing on their plate before they move to the next thing. Some people like their corn and mashed potatoes mixed. Other people don't like their foods to touch at all. Some people won't eat salad if it's on the same plate as a main dish. Salad has to be in a different bowl. Some people eat their salad first. Some people eat their salad last. So everybody eats a little bit differently. We tend to not think about that. We want to try to feed everybody the way we eat. Help isn't help if it doesn't help, right? So if we're feeding somebody else and we've got several things to choose from, we want to be asking, what would you like first? What would you like next? Do you want your meat and potatoes together? Do you want your corn and potatoes mixed? What do how would you eat this? I'm just your hands here. Tell your hands what to do. Don't assume that they're going to eat like you do. Does that make sense? Well, that's why we have to offer a drink before and every 2 to 3 bites, because not everybody drinks like you do. Some people drink an entire glass of water before they eat. My aunt was like that. She swore that's how she stayed in shape, right? Because she'd fill up on water before she ate. It didn't ever work for me, but it worked for her. Some people drink with a meal. I don't produce a lot of saliva. I have to have water to, drink while I'm eating to make everything go down really well. So I'm usually taking a drink every couple of bites. My husband doesn't drink at all with a meal. He drinks after his meal. Everybody is different. So that's why this checkpoint exists. We're going to offer before and every 2 to 3 bites. So if we get to bite 4 and you didn't offer a drink, you're not being aware of the patient's needs. Okay. Good. All right. This skill is different than every other skill we do. So if you go back a page to page 72 and 73, that's what I'm going to get into right now. This is the only skill that you do not close the privacy curtain for. And that's because eating is a social event. We gather in groups to eat. Think of all the major milestones in your life, right? Baby showers, always food. Weddings, always food. Graduations, always food. Birthday parties, always food. Funerals, always food, right? We gather in groups to eat. Eating marks social events. So if you have a patient isolated in a room and you have closed that curtain, you have actually removed them from social interaction. And that can have a huge impact on their intake. So we don't close the privacy curtain. In fact, whenever possible, we like people to be able to gather in groups to eat. in the dining room or day room or something like that. That's an important part, especially long-term care. It's important part of health maintenance. Okay, because when we're talking about health maintenance, it's not just physical, it's also emotional and mental health. So we don't close the privacy curtain. It's also the one skill that you are required to sit. So you have to pull up a chair. You can't stand above somebody and feed them without them feeling inferior and rushed. So you have to pull up a chair and sit eye to eye. It's also the only skill where your conversation is graded. The rest of the skills, you can parrot what I say. You can explain to the patient what you're doing. You can't do that with feeding. You can't say, okay, I'm getting some food on the spoon now, and I'm bringing it to your mouth. I mean, that's condescending. So you have to have a conversation. Now, it doesn't have to be a real one. You can make something up. You can say they're playing bingo later in the activity room. They're showing a movie on the big screen. Did you see the little kids at Easter time? Make something up. I don't care, but you have to have a conversation with your patient. Super important. If you go through this entire skill and you feed the patient in silence, you will fail. Imagine how awkward that would be. So, for example, let's say that we all go over to Cody's after class for buy one, get one free fajita Wednesdays. And we walk in there and the place is packed because it's always packed at lunchtime on Wednesday. So we go in there and we walk in the door, we're waiting to be seated, and it's dead silent. There's 60 people in there, but it's dead silent. How awkward would that feel? Okay, so remember that eating is social. You have to have a conversation. You don't just stare at another person and chew. That's awkward. So when you're chewing, somebody else is talking. When they're chewing, you're responding, right? We have conversations when we eat all the time. For some reason, people just like blank out at that. You're not talking with your mouth full, but we are encouraging conversation. Does that make sense? Good. We can't use childlike feeding techniques. No airplanes, race cars, choo-choo trains, nothing like that. You want to feed an adult like an adult, but when you're feeding, you want to only fill the spoon half full. Don't overload the spoon to get this done quickly. You don't want to feed them as fast as possible. You want to give them time to chew and swallow and enjoy their food. Okay, good. We're going to offer a clothing protector. They don't have to wear one. Man, my grandmother, if you try to put a clothing protector on her, she would tell you in no uncertain terms, I am not a child. I do not need a bib, right? Me, I need one. I wear everything. So if you offer me a clothing protector, I'm probably going to say, yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. You know, I have a hard enough time getting food to my mouth. I don't have any faith in you being able to do it, right? I'm gonna end up wearing something. So we are going to offer, but we're not going to force the patient to do that, to wear one. We are going to help them wash their hands before they eat, because that's part of the eating ritual. Most people wash their hands before they eat. So this helps with the eating ritual, but it also, more importantly, when you're feeding somebody, it doesn't mean that they're paralyzed. It just means that they can't feed themselves. So their fingers may come up to their mouth to push food in, to wipe food away. You do not want dirty hands around the mouth during feeding. So infection control is a big reason for them to wash their hands. Good? Does that make sense? Okay. So remember that this is a skill that doesn't really follow all of our normal patterns. But let me talk to you a few minutes about feeding, because a lot of people don't think about this. When you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you psychologically more than any other skill. This is the hardest skill to be a patient for. I'm not talking about when you're practicing or the test. I'm talking about in real life. And that's because eating is the very, very first skill we become independent at. You learn how to hold a bottle before you even know what hungry is. You learn how to pick up Cheerios and diced peaches off of a high chair tray and get them to your mouth before you're mastering sitting. It's the first skill you develop. So when you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you psychologically in a way that no other skill does. People that have to be fed feel very dependent. They will often question their self-worth. There's often a lot of depression and anger that goes along with that because it's something that they've been able to do for themselves for their entire life, and now they can't. So the way that you approach this skill is going to be very important. If you act like you're bored, you don't want to be there, this is a waste of your time, your patient will pick up on that. Absolutely. So you want to make sure that you're checking your nonverbal skills because your patient is having a hard time with this. I guarantee it. Studies have shown over and over and over again that when patients are fed, their intake drops significantly because they feel like they're in imposition. So we have to go out of our way to make them not feel that way. Does that make sense? It's a hard skill for me to explain to you the effects on the patient, but it's serious. So we had a patient way back when I was working in long-term care, when I was a brand new nurse, we had a patient who was losing weight. I mean, she was already tiny to begin with, but she got down under 90 pounds. And we kept asking the CNAs, how is she eating? What's going on? And automatically I'm thinking she's got some sort of cancer or debilitating disease. She's got something going on, something medical going on to make her lose this kind of weight. So I walked by the room one day while a CNA was feeding her. Now the patient was bedbound. She had a stroke and was nonverbal, but she was still very mentally with it. She just couldn't speak. And the CNA only had the head of the bed up a little bit, just a little bit. And the CNA, if the patient is here, the CNA is watching TV. And give the patient a spoon, watch TV, give the patient another spoonful, watch TV. So first of all, did the patient feel safe eating in a reclined position? Okay, now she's nonverbal. She can't tell anybody she doesn't feel safe. Does the patient feel comfortable with a CNA feeding them whose attention is 100% somewhere else? Patient probably feels a whole lot like an imposition, right? So she didn't have a medical problem. Her problem was she had incompetent staff members that were taking care of her. And that's a problem I can fix. So when I saw that, I immediately walked in the room and told the CNA, go on break. I'll finish up here, go on break. And I told her, I said, Miss Mary, do you mind if I sit down? My feet are killing me. It's been a really long shift. So I pulled up a chair. I turned the TV off. And she and I had a conversation. And after about 2 or 3 bites, she kind of held her hand up and turned her head away. And I said, oh, Mary, don't send me out there yet. Come on, take another couple bites for me, please. I just want to sit for a few minutes. So she did. And I kept encouraging her, and she ate the entire tray of food. So it wasn't a medical problem. It was an attention problem. We have the power of life and death over our patients. We've got to take that seriously. Okay. Good? Makes sense? All right. So remember, for this one, we're going to offer a hand wipe. We're going to offer a clothing protector. We'll offer a drink before and every 2 to 3 bites. We're going to let the patients lead, feed them at their pace. Spoon should only be half full, and we don't use any childlike feeding techniques. Now, we have to document this skill. It is a documentation skill. And for the test, we are going to document using percentages. So what we're going to talk about now is on page 74. You can actually see the documentation sheet in the middle of page 75. I know it's super small, But on page 120 in the back, or I'm sorry, 121 in the back, you'll see the actual documentation sheet that will be used on the exam. But we do this based on percentages. So you have to know what the patient's starting with to know how much of that they ate. If I told you that a patient ate all of the pudding cup, you would probably think that they ate 100%, right? They ate all the pudding cup 100%. But what if I told you they ate all the pudding cup, but it was on a tray with a sandwich, chips, peaches, and the pudding cup? They ate the whole pudding cup. Did they really eat 100%? So you have to know what you're starting with to understand the percentage that they ate. Now, in healthcare, we usually use what we call a quarter scale. So 0 means they didn't touch it at all. 25% means they kind of picked at it, couple bites. 50%, they gave it a try, but half of it's still left. 75%, they ate most of it, but they're not a clean plate club member, right? 100%, they ate it all. So we're going to estimate how much they ate based on what they started with. So if you look on page 74, you can see 2 activities there. The first one has 2 eggs, 3 slices of bacon, 2 half pieces of toast, and some peaches. So number 1, we go to pick up the tray and it's completely empty. How much do they eat? 100%. Number 2, out of the 2 eggs, there's 1. Out of the 3 slices of bacon, there's 1.5. Out of the 2 pieces of toast, there's 1. How much did this person eat? 50%, half. Yeah. Number 3, most of it is gone, most of it, but not all. How much would we call that? 75. And number 4 looks basically the same way we delivered it. They took a bite out of the toast. They picked at the peaches. They ate a slice of bacon. Yeah, we can give them credit for 25%. Good? Makes sense? Okay, so looking up here at this graphic, if we start out with a sandwich, broccoli, and Jell-O, and we're trying to estimate how much these patients ate. If you look here, how much of this meal did this person eat? About 25%. What about this one? About 50. What about that one? What about that one? Yeah. But we're going on a quarter scale, so we're going to give them credit for 100. Okay, because it's closer to 100 than it is to 75. Good? Make sense? All right. So now we go to fluids. So for the test, we are going to document fluids based on that same percentage scale, right? If they didn't touch it, 0. If they took a sip, 25. If they drank half of it, 50. If they mostly finished it, 75. If the cup is empty, 100, right? We're going to use that same quarter scale. But in healthcare, so that's for the test quarter scale. But in healthcare, excuse me, a lot of our patients are going to be on I's and O's. That means intake and output. So we have to measure how much liquid the patient took in each shift and how much they expelled each shift. So liquid in can be fluids that you're drinking, but it could also be liquid food like soups, Jell-O, things that are liquid at room temperature, right? So they're also going to keep track of how many IVs the patient had, how much irrigation for wounds, how much blood they were given. So anything liquid that goes into the patient, either through a natural opening or through an artificial opening like an IV, would be counted. Now, as a CNA, you're going to be responsible for this part of it, what goes in the mouth. Now, in healthcare, we don't use ounces, we use cc's. So if you look at a normal water bottle, you're just a regular, I don't have any in here, but a regular water bottle. You have one? Ah, there it is. If you look at that, it's probably 15.9 ounces. Okay, what's on the label? We wouldn't put that in here because we don't measure using ounces. We measure using mLs or cc's. Same thing. mLs and cc's, same thing. Same measurement. And that bottle is 500 mLs. So we wouldn't put 15.9 ounces. We would put 500 mLs. But a lot of that's nice because it actually tells you right on the label, right? If you look at the label, it'll tell you 500 mLs. But not everything that we use in healthcare is going to be labeled. Like juices will, cartons of milk will, sodas will. But if you just pour a cup of water, we've got to be able to know how many mLs is that cup. So we have to do a little bit of math here. So each ounce is worth 30 mLs or cc's. So if I have 1 ounce of fluid, that is 30 mLs. If I have 6 ounces of fluid, I would multiply 6 by 30 to get 180. You will have a math problem on the state exam. You will either have a conversion problem where you have to convert ounces to cc's, or you're going to have an addition problem that gives you a bunch of intake and you have to add it up. You will have a math problem on the state exam. Okay. So if you look at the bottom of the second column on page 74, you can see there's a cup there with 6 ounces of juice. Well, if we multiply the 6 by 30, we get 180. So 6 ounces is 180 cc's. If you look at the milk carton, well, luckily our milk carton actually tells us how many mLs or cc's there are. So 8 ounces would be how many mLs? 240. And then we have 12 ounces of coffee. And man, that is a monster coffee cup. 12 ounces of coffee. If we multiply 12 by 30, what do we get? 360. So that's how we do conversions. That's how we convert ounces to mLs. And you need to know how to do that. That's super important for CNAs to be able to do. Now, at the end of the shift, we're going to add together all of the intake for the day. So if we add together 180 plus 240 plus 360, how many mLs do we get for the shift? You can do the math, write it down. 780, that is correct, 780. So our total intake for the shift would be 780. Good?
Is this, is the documentation also going to be on the skills test, or is that just the written?
No, the documentation will be on you will actually get, if you go to page 121, do you see the food and fluid intake form?
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get on the state exam. So you would get that before you ever start the skill. They're going to hand it to you. You want to put it in a place that you can see. So that way you remember to document at the end, but that is the exact form that they use. Okay. And we don't use a barrier for this skill because we don't need one. The food tray is the barrier. If you want to go get a barrier, that's fine, but you don't need it. So one time we're actually using the table for what it's supposed to be used for, right? So the food tray becomes your barrier. You don't need one. You know, if it's a habit thing and you grab one, that's fine. It won't count against you, but you don't need one. All right.
Assign like a couple random skills, or would it be like all of them?
It's not, no, you're going to get 3 skills. It's not random. Go to page 17. I'm sorry. Yeah, 17. These are the actual testing care plans. Remember that yellow packet that we have up there? Remember this? Okay. These are the actual skills, the sets of 3 skills that you will get on the state exam. You're going to get one of these 11 sets. And you can see them there on page 17 of your book. So each one of these are not random. Each one of these skill sets has an ADL skill. You guys remember what ADL stands for? Yeah, activities of daily living. Yep. So bathing, dressing, grooming, that type of thing, right? So hand and nail care, foot care, partial bed bath, dressing a resident, that would all be an ADL skill. You will get one documentation skill. So pulse, respirations, emptying the urinary drainage bag, or feeding, because that's a documentation skill. And you're going to get one mobility skill. So a mobility skill would be like range of motion, ambulating, sideline position, turning the patient over in bed, transferring out of bed and into a wheelchair. A mobility skill means moving a patient in some way. Okay. So each one of these has an ADL skill, a documentation skill, and a mobility skill on it. They're already pre-packaged in sets of 3. You are going to get one of these sets to demonstrate on the state exam. Okay. Good question. Any other questions? Any others? Really good medical abbreviations. We talked about that already. All right, so here are our important checkpoints here. Remember, your patient needs to be sitting fully upright, and our care plan tells us they're not. So a graded checkpoint is to ask them to sit up. We're going to offer a hand wipe and clothing protector. We are going to sit while we feed them. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 to 3 bites. We're going to use small bites. Remember, the spoon should only be half full. Don't overload the spoon. We want to feed them slowly. We're going to have a conversation and encourage the patient to eat. And then we're going to leave the area around the mouth clean and dry and document. I will show you the video for this one. I don't have anything to feed you. And this one has better close-ups. So if you look at the bottom of the page, that too, page 75. You'll see that the state gives you 9 minutes to perform this skill. How long it takes. You have plenty of time. Please do not rush. Remember, a big part of this skill is to make the patient feel like you want to be there.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patti. I'm with CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back.
Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, I'll get your right hand right. So that you can wipe your hands. Take that. Thank you very much. Let me dispose of this. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yeah.
Just place this on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Good.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes.
Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes.
Ready for another bite?
Yes.
Ready for another bite? Are you sure you wouldn't like just one more bite?
Okay, thank you.
Can I get you something else in the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We do have food available on the unit.
Thank you.
Let me take the napkin. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're gonna put this in dirty linen. Going to go take care of your tray. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate and the amount of fluid they consumed. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. All right, any questions on that one? Any questions? Okay, we're down to the last skill for today. We're going to go ahead and take a break, come back at 10:30. We'll go through the last skill and then the rest of the class will be practice.
All right, let's go ahead and turn in our skills books to page 110. All right, the care plan at the top of this page says the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perineal care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. So this is an incontinent patient. She's been incontinent of urine. The pad is wet, but everything else is dry. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see this is going to be done on a mannequin. So this is a mannequin skill. We're still going to teach or treat the patient as if she were a real person. You're going to talk to her, explain what you're doing, all of that. But it will be done on a mannequin for the state exam. And the pad isn't actually going to be wet. We're going to kind of pretend for that. But let's talk about what incontinent means. So it sounds like they may be coming back. All right, so when we have a normally functioning urinary system, so this would be a patient who is able to hold their own urine just like you know, normally functioning system. So we have two kidneys, and those kidneys filter blood, remove waste products, and create urine 24 hours a day. It never stops. So kidneys are always filtering blood nonstop. When they produce urine through the waste products, those urine drops drip down tubes called ureters and collect in the bladder. So kidneys filter blood, produce urine. That urine drips down tubes called ureters and collects in the bladder. A little valve at the bottom of the bladder is what holds the urine in the bladder. So eventually the bladder gets full. A little bell rings in your brain, go find a bathroom. You go to the bathroom, the valve opens, the urine comes out. Valve closes, you're ready to go for a while longer. So this is a normally functioning urinary system, but remember that the kidneys produce urine 24 hours a day, drip, drip, drip. So come on in. So remember that kidneys work 24 hours a day. That's important to understand when we're talking about incontinence. So this is continent, meaning that the patient's valve is working, holding urine in the bladder. When we have incontinence, the system is still the same. We still have kidneys. They're still filtering blood. They still produce urine, drip, drip, drip down the ureters, and it goes into the bladder. This has not changed. Incontinent does not change this. When a patient is incontinent, this is the part that doesn't work, the valve. So remember, those kidneys filtered blood and produced urine 24 hours a day, drip, drip, drip. So if we don't have anything to keep those drips in the bladder, they're just going to come out. That's what incontinence is. But remember, this system is working 24 hours a day. So the patient is going to be drip, 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 drip all the time. If you have a patient who is dry, 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 really, really wet, you do not have an incontinent patient because that valve is holding urine in the bladder. That is not an incontinent patient. That's incompetent staff members that aren't taking the patient to the bathroom. So it's important to understand what incontinence is and what incontinence isn't. So remember that when a patient is incontinent, the system still works. It's the valve that's broken. Now, a lot of times we can fix this. This valve is a muscle, like any other muscle in your body. If you spend your entire life on the couch, your muscles are going to get flabby. But if you get up and start working and moving and doing exercises, those muscles firm back up, right? Same thing here. This is a muscle. This valve is a muscle. So if your muscle is floppy and it's not working, if we do exercises and work it out, we can actually regain control of that muscle. And this is called bowel and bladder retraining. It means that we're getting the patient up and to the bathroom every 2 hours around the clock. We're going to wake them up at 2 a.m. and get them to the bathroom. We're going to wake them up at 4 a.m. and get them to the bathroom. We're going to wake them up at 6 a.m. and get them to the bathroom. And by that constant closing and opening of this valve, it starts to strengthen. Okay. So when we have an incontinent patient, a lot of times they'll be on bowel and bladder retraining. That means we're toileting them every 2 hours around the clock. Some CNAs think that that's cruel. You can wake the patient up at 2 a.m. That's mean. Well, when we have an incontinent patient, remember this urine is coming out all the time. Drip, 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 drip. And adult urine is not like baby urine. Baby urine, we don't even call it urine. We call it something cute like TT or tinkle or, you know, right? It's mild. It's very alkaline. It's neutral. So baby urine does not affect the skin because the acid level in urine is dependent on what you eat. Babies, they eat bland stuff. Rice cereal, formula, baby food, bland, neutral pH. So their urine is going to be neutral. Make sense? Adult diets are full of all kinds of acid. So we end up with very acidic urine. So if we put a diaper on a baby and put them to bed and let them sleep all night, when we wake them up the next morning, they still have skin on their tush because the urine is mild. You do that to an adult, their acidic urine is going to eat through their skin. So when we have a patient who is incontinent, we have to clean them every 2 hours around the clock. So we're already waking them up to clean them. Let's get them up out of bed to the bathroom at the same time. And if we do that, we can strengthen that muscle. Okay. Make sense? Okay. So remember that incontinent patients will always be wet. Always be wet. As soon as you're done cleaning them, they're going to be wet because they have no control over it. If they could control it, they wouldn't be incontinent, right? So this is also going to be affected by position. And you have to think about the bladder as kind of like a water balloon, right? So if we have a water balloon that is laying flat, the water's kind of spread out over a surface, right? What happens if you tip that water balloon up, right? All the water goes to the bottom. Same thing here. When we change a patient's position that's incontinent, if they have urine in their bladder that's just laying there, when you change their position, it's going to come out. So when you turn a patient over to clean their backside, they're probably going to pee a little bit because there's urine in the bladder. Does that make sense? That's important. There was a case about 3 or 4 years ago of a young man that was working in assisted living as a resident aide, caring for an incontinent patient. And when he turned her over, urine came out. He felt that was disrespectful, so he beat her to death. To somebody that did not understand how incontinence works. So this is why I go over this with you so that you have a good foundation of exactly what's happening in the body and your mind doesn't create a problem that's not there. Okay. All right, so let's talk about depends. We don't call these diapers. Remember, if it's a child term, we don't use it on adults. So we don't use bibs. We don't use diapers. This is an incontinence brief or an adult brief, or some people will call them depends. Those are all fine. We do not call them diapers. Make sense? Good. Okay, let's talk about those. The whole purpose of them is to keep the urine from soiling your clothes, right? To keep the urine contained. It's the whole purpose. which means in order to keep the urine contained, it's got to be waterproof. So if water can't get through, either can air. So it's going to trap body heat against the skin. So we end up with warm, dark, moist, and high acid. That is the ideal breeding environment for pathogens. So when we have a patient out of bed, we are going to use an adult brief because that's a dignity issue. But if they're in bed, there's a better way. We still have to clean and change them every 2 hours around the clock, whether they have an adult brief on or they don't. It doesn't matter. We still are cleaning them every 2 hours around the clock. If they're out of bed, this is good. But if they're in bed, this is not good. We actually want light and air to be able to circulate. That helps reduce the amount of infection. So a lot of people, when they're incontinent and in bed, will be open to air, which means that they have a gown on and they're laying on a pad, but no undergarments. Because remember, those undergarments are going to hold that urine right up next to the skin, and that's not good for the skin. Now, this is going to depend on your patient. Some patients won't be comfortable being open to air, and they may have an adult brief on. We're still going to clean and change them every 2 hours. But if we can have them open to air, it reduces the risks of infections, yeast infections, fungal infections, bacterial infections like UTIs, skin infections. There's a lot of things that we're trying to prevent here. Okay, good. So if possible, the nurse talking to the patient may have on the care plan that the patient is open to air while in bed. That's what we are dealing with here. Patient is open to air. But let's think about that pad for a second, because remember, now the urine isn't being held right up next to the skin, it's spreading out over that pad. You guys remember me saying that room temperature always wins? You guys remember that? Okay, so our body temperature is about 98.6 degrees. Urine is actually a little bit hotter than that because it's right here in our furnace area. So when urine comes out, it's about 101 degrees. So we have 101 degree urine that hits 75 degree air. Room temperature always wins. So that urine is going to cool down really quick. That pad is going to feel cold, wet, and slimy to your patient. What's the first thing you think they want done? Change the pad. So we're going to change the pad out first. That's the very first thing that we do, change that pad. But now we've got a dirty butt on a clean pad. So once we're done cleaning the patient, we're going to clean the front, turn them over, clean the back because they've been laying in urine. We don't want that urine against the skin. Once we've done that, now we've got a clean body, and that deserves a clean pad. So this skill is going to require 2 chucks changes, one at the beginning to get the patient comfortable. The one at the end is to make sure that we are starting from a clean slate. Good. 2 chucks changes for this. Now, everything I just told you is on page 107, 108, and 109. Remember that we are changing and cleaning the patient every 2 hours around the clock. Regardless of whether they're open to air or in an adult brief, it doesn't matter. We're cleaning and changing every 2 hours around the clock. Remember that the risk for infections is high here. Very high, because that valve is not closed. There's no doorway to restrict bacteria from entering the bladder. And every bacteria in the world is trying to find a bladder to get into. They're warm, they're dark, they're moist, but they also have an all-you-can-eat buffet and an open bar. The enzymes and proteins that are necessary for bacteria to procreate are found in the bladder. So this is the ideal breeding environment for your bacteria friends. And there's nothing restricting entry. So when we do this, infection control becomes very important. We always want to wipe away from the urethra, always. We've got some white blood cells in the area that are looking for intruders. And if they find them, they kick them out. And as long as only 1 or 2 bacteria come in at a time, that system works. But if we bring a whole busload of bacteria up, our little white blood cells can't handle that demand. So the patient can end up with a urinary tract infection. So we always wipe away from the urethra or from top to bottom. Never go back up. In the elderly, a urinary tract infection doesn't have the classic symptoms. In the elderly, when they get a urinary tract infection, it usually causes confusion. So if we've got an incontinent patient that appears confused today, that needs to be reported to the nurse immediately. Don't wait. Okay. Good. We're going to use the same leaves method that we learned on Monday. You guys remember the leaves method? We took a regular washcloth, this regular washcloth, folded in half, and in half again to make a square. You guys remember that? But instead of looking at it as a square, we turned it and looked at it as a diamond with the free ends at the top. Tuck the two side pieces in, and now we've got a clean area to clean with. So we're going to take one stroke, never go back up, top to bottom, move away, and then we're going to fold that down. That traps the contamination underneath. Now we've got a new cleaning surface, top to bottom, move away, fold down. New cleaning surface, top to bottom, move away, fold down. New cleaning surface. Top to bottom, move away, fold down, new cleaning surface. You guys remember the leaves method? We're going to use this anytime we're washing a wet body opening. That could be eyes, nose, mouth, genitals, rectal area, wounds, rashes, sores, or incisions. So the 5 strokes that we're going to use for peri-care is straight down the middle. Remember, we never go back up. So we're going to start at the top, go straight down the middle, fold our leaf. We're going to go on the outside, top to bottom, fold our leaf. Go on the other outside, top to bottom, fold our leaf. This area between the leg and the groin, this skin fold, top to bottom, fold the leaf. This skin fold, top to bottom, fold the leaf. Whatever we wash, whatever we rinse, same way. Then we're going to turn the patient over and we're going to clean their backside. Oh, I don't have that on here. The backside, you're going to go up the center crease, clean one cheek, clean the other cheek, and up the center crease again, because urine's going to run. It's like a riverbed. Urine runs right through there. And we're going to use the leaves method for those 4 strokes. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Okay. Patient's going to be uncovered. So what do you think we need? Privacy blanket. We're in the patient's personal area. What do we need to have on? When we get linens, we're not going to let them touch our. If we get too many linens, we're going to put the extras in the hamper. Dirty linen. Absolutely. When we turn the patient over to clean their backside, where do they need to be in the bed? In the middle of the bed. You already know washing rules. You know how to do this skill. You just had to learn where to wash. Okay, there's nothing new to learn here. Nothing. Not a single thing. All right, so to do peri-care, we're going to change that chucks out first because it's ooey gooey and gross to the patient. We're going to use the leaves method and change the leaf for each stroke. We're always going to clean from front to back. So we're going to clean middle, side, skin fold, skin fold. We'll wash, rinse, dry using that method. Never move back up on the cleaning stroke. Turn the patient on the side to clean the back side, always moving away from the anal opening, and we'll change the chucks again. This is a little bit of a longer skill. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that this can take up to 17 minutes. Remember, a partial bed bath was 19 minutes. So page 110. Partial bed bath was 19 minutes. So this is the second longest skill that we have. The hardest part of this skill, guys, is your reaction to it. You're probably not very comfortable performing this skill. You're going to have to get comfortable with it. The only way to do that is to practice. This is a mannequin skill. You have the mannequin here. You can practice on her. Okay, good. All right, so let me show you this skill. I'm going to show you the video because it has really good close-ups. And then that will give you time to practice in class today.
because this is the last skill we're learning today. So you have 17 minutes to get this done. I get it done in 11. Plenty of time. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to get Carrie here. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my cleaning supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 chucks, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm, not hot, not cold, just warm. Ms. Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloth in the water. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, fold it up lengthwise and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Ms. Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that cover you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you, and roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one and tuck it under the soil. Ms. Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soil chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up. And on the way, I'm going to try to get that gown rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the period area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel. And then get my first washcloth. I'm gonna wring this out. And sew 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm gonna clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her period area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom. And then we'll fold that leaf over. We're gonna clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is gonna clean this area between the leg and the groin, the skin fold, top to bottom. We're gonna fold that over and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on the derrick. The second washcloth, we're gonna wring out. And we're gonna rinse all of those areas the same way we washed. So we're gonna hold it slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're gonna rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle cap. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scooch you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, bring it out really well, and we're going to sew 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the angle opening and go up the center crease, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean 1 buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the angle opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whatever we washed, we rinse. So I'll wring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we washed. So from the angle opening up the center crease, fold that over. 1 buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you. So you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks and tuck it under the soil. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the back. And unroll the clean. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we cleaned everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Cleanse the basin. Take it
up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside. And discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel to open the door. And store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now be thrown away. Barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll collect the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. I'm going to pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go put this in dirty money. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your caller. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done.
All right. Any questions on anything that we've gone over today? Any questions? So we're now down to the last three skills. We have a range of motion. Remember how we did range of motion? We've done 2 range of motions so far. You guys remember that? Shoulder and elbow and wrist. So we're going to learn another range of motion, hip, knee, and ankle on Monday. We're going to learn catheter care, which is pericare with an extra step. We're going to clean the tubing. And we're also going to learn how to empty the urinary drainage bag. And that's all infection control. But there's not a lot of new stuff to learn next week on Monday. So again, I'll be teaching for about the first 2 hours, just like today. And you'll have about 2 hours of practice time built in to the class on Monday as well. Next Wednesday, you graduate. So you're only 2 classes away from graduating. When during graduation, we do take a class photo. I do post it to Facebook. I don't tag anybody. So you'll have to go to my Facebook page and you can share it if you want to, or tag yourself. But we do take a class photo for graduation. I'm going to be talking to you about continuing education, finding a job, interview tips, help you figure out what to say when they ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself, that type of thing. So we're going to go over a lot of those topics. Continuing education is probably the biggest thing that I have to teach you on graduation day, but you will also have practice time on graduation day as well. So between now and graduation, you'll have about 6 hours of practice. You should be able to complete everything. If you watched all of my videos back to back, you know, if you strung them all together and just rolled from one into the next, all of these skills, all 21 skills, take about 2 hours to watch. So if you've got 6 hours, that means theoretically you could do all of these skills 3 times. Okay. Good. Okay. All right. So YouTube world, we're going to go ahead and sign off so the classroom students can practice. I'm not seeing any questions on YouTube. So remember, tomorrow we have our live question and answer session at 3 p.m. Make sure you tune in for that. We had the practice test game show yesterday. Did anybody tune in for that? The practice test game show? Yeah. Okay, it's very helpful. It gives you questions that might be found on the state exam. You get to decide what the answer is, and then I tell you why the right answer is the right answer. So it's very, very interactive. That'll be coming up again in 3 weeks. I do that on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday, but you can go back and watch the replays as well. So tomorrow is our live question and answer session at 3. All right, we're gonna go ahead and sign off YouTube world. So until next time, happy caregiving. Bye.